This is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. First, the headlines. Niger, Russian military trainers arrive this week. Israel-Hamas war, U.S. highlights role to prevent wider regional escalation. Singapore, Prime Minister Lee to step down after 2 decades. United Kingdom, survivors of 2017 bombing sue intelligence agency. United States, Colorado passes bill to ban semi-automatic firearms. Australia, police investigates lone assailant who killed 6 people. Now the news in details. Russian military trainers arrived this week in Niger to reinforce the country's air defenses as the West African nation pulls away from close cooperation with the United States in counterterrorism efforts, turning instead to Russia for security. State television in Niger on Thursday broadcast footage of Russian military trainers arriving in the country aboard a plane equipped with military supplies. 2 Russian trainers were filmed in front of the plane at night wearing military uniforms, caps and face coverings. "We are here to train the Nigerian army to use the military equipment that is here," one of the Russian trainers said in a broadcast. Speaking in French, "We are here to develop military cooperation between Russia and Niger." Niger's ruling military council, known as the CNSP, has yet to order American troops out, U.S. officials have said, but the arrival of Russian forces makes it complicated for the U.S. forces, along with diplomatic and civilian personnel, to remain in the country. It also throws into doubt the future of joint Niger-U.S. counterinsurgency operations. Until recently, Washington considered Niger a key partner and ally in a region swept by coups in recent years, investing millions of dollars in an airbase in a desert near area that served as the heart of American counterinsurgency operations in Africa's sub-Saharan region known as the Sahel. A years-long war in Sudan has devastated the country and pushed its people to the brink of famine. Top diplomats and aid groups are meeting Monday in Paris to drum up humanitarian support for the northeastern African nation to prevent further collapse and misery. Sudan descended into conflict in April last year when simmering tensions between the military and the paramilitary rapid support forces exploded into open fighting in the capital, Khartoum, and elsewhere across the country. Members of Sudan's civil society and local NGOs will be involved in the Paris meeting, but neither the Sudanese army nor its rival, the RSF, will be represented. The UN humanitarian campaign needs some $2.7 billion this year to get food, healthcare and other supplies to 24 million people in Sudan, nearly half its population of 51 million. So far, funders have given only $145 million, about 5% according to the UN's humanitarian office, known as OCHA. French Foreign Minister Stéphane Séjourné said the aim of Monday's conference is to mobilize humanitarian funding to help Sudanese people who have been victims of both a terrible and international indifference. It is a colossal task, Sejoni said, "It is a war the Sudanese people did not want, a war that only produces chaos and suffering," he added. The European Union's Crisis Management Commissioner, Janice Lenasik, said the 27-member bloc seeks to ensure that Sudan is not forgotten as wars in Gaza and Ukraine dominates the international news. People of Sudan caught up in this emergency are almost completely invincible, Lenasik said. In a years-long war, Sudan has turned into one of the worst humanitarian disasters ever on the African continent, he said, and added, "It is our duty not to look away." The United States and Saudi Arabia initially led efforts to find a negotiated way out of the conflict, but the efforts didn't succeed, and since October, the fighting has been overshadowed by the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza, which is threatening to expand a broader regional conflict. Floods have killed 58 people in Tanzania during the last 2 weeks, the government said, as the heavy rains continue in the East African country. The coastal region was hit hardest, with 126,831 people affected, according to the government. Government spokesperson Mopare Martini said on Sunday that essential supplies, including food, had been distributed to those affected. Tanzania plans to construct 14 dams to prevent flooding in future, he added. East Africa is experiencing heavy rains with reported flooding in neighboring Kenya, killing at least 13 people so far. Infrastructure has also been damaged, and those living in flood-prone areas are being urged to move. Rains are expected to reach their peak towards the end of this month. The United States on Sunday highlighted its role in helping Israel thwart Iran's aerial attack on President Joe Biden's convened leaders of the Group of 7 countries in an effort to prevent a wider regional escalation and coordinate a global rebuke of Tehran. The U.S. assisted Israel in shooting down dozens of drones and missiles fired by Iran on Saturday in what was the first time it had launched a direct military assault on Israel. Israeli authorities said 99% of the inbound weapons were shot down without causing any significant damage. U.S. officials said that despite the high interception rate, Iran's intent was to destroy and cause casualties, and that if successful, the strikes would have caused an uncontrollable escalation across the Middle East, U.S. officials said. Biden told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in an effort to contain tensions that Washington would not participate in any offensive action against Iran, and the president made very clear to Netanyahu that we do have to think carefully and strategically about risks of escalation. The push to encourage Israel to show restraint mirrored ongoing American efforts to curtail Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza, which is now in its 7th month, and to do more to protect civilian lives in the territory. While the U.S. and its allies were preparing for days for such an attack, the launches were at the high end of what was anticipated, according to the officials, who were not authorized to publicly discuss the matter and spoke on condition of anonymity. At one point, at least 100 ballistic missiles from Iran were in the air simultaneously, with just minutes of flight time to Israel, the officials said. Biden and senior officials monitored the firings and interception attempts in real time, while the White House Situation Room, the officials said, there was relief in the room once they saw that the missile defense efforts had succeeded. Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said Monday that he will step down on May 15 after 2 decades at the helm and hand power to his deputy Lawrence Wong. Lee, 72, will formally advise the city's state president to appoint Wong, who is currently deputy prime minister and finance minister, to succeed him, his office said in a brief statement. Wong, who has the unanimous support of lawmakers in the long-ruling People's Action Party, will be sworn in at the National Palace later the same day, it said. Lee has served as Prime Minister and head of the PAP since August 2004. Lee announced last November that he would retire this year and has already named Wong as his designated successor. Lee originally planned to step down before turning 70, but those plans were shelved because of the COVID-19 pandemic. For any country, a leadership transition is a significant moment. Lawrence and the 4G fourth-generation team have worked hard to gain the people's trust, notably during the pandemic, Lee said in a Facebook post on Monday. I ask all Singaporeans to give Lawrence and his team your full support and work with them to create a brighter future for Singapore. Lee has said there is no reason to delay the political transition and that the passing the baton to Wong before national elections due next year will allow the 51-year-old politician to win his own mandate and take the country forward. Wong came to prominence while helping to coordinate Singapore's fight against COVID-19. He will be the city's state fourth leader since its independence in 1965. HAP, one of the world's longest-serving parties, retained its supermajority with 83 out of 93 parliamentary seats in 2020 general elections. But that was its worst performance after losing some seats and support supplied. Lee is the eldest son of Lee Kuan Yew, who became Singapore's first prime minister and built the resource-poor city-state into one of the world's richest nations during 31 years in office. But Singapore has also been criticized for its tight government control, media censorship, and use of oppressive laws and civil lawsuits against dissidents. A civil lawsuit accusing Japanese police of racial profiling opened Monday with emotional testimony from plaintiffs who said they were constantly stopped and questioned without good reason. The case filed in January by 3 residents of Japan with overseas ancestry, including an American, claims their treatment constitutes discrimination and violates their human rights. Japan does not have any anti-discrimination law, nor any laws or guidelines aimed at preventing racial profiling, but the government and police deny they discriminate and say they are just doing their jobs. They have yet to outline the specifics of their arguments, expected in the next session of court in July. A verdict is expected in about a year. We are relaying our feelings, our experiences, and our views, said plaintiff Said Zain, a Japanese citizen of Pakistani descent, speaking to reporters after appearing in Tokyo District Court. Zain said he has been treated like a criminal despite having lived in Japan for 2 decades, having attended Japanese schools as a child and being fluent in the language. He wants to be recognized as a Japanese person and to help make Japan a better place, he said. He and his 2 fellow plaintiffs are suing the national government and police, as well as the prefectural police of Tokyo and Aichi prefectures. The case, which could prove a landmark for Japan, has drawn widespread support and attention in a nation reputed for friendly community policing and a relatively low crime rate. It also highlights how a culture that prides itself on its insularity is grappling with the recent influx of people from abroad. The number of non-citizens living in Japan reached a record high recently, with more than 3.2 million people. The lawsuits demand 3 million yen in punitive damages per plaintiff as compensation for unconstitutional and illegal treatment, plus 300,000 yen per plaintiff in attorney's fees. Lightning and heavy rains have killed at least 36 people, mostly farmers, across Pakistan in the past 3 days, officials said Monday, as authorities in the country's southwest declared a state of emergency. Most of the deaths occurred when lightning struck farmers harvesting wheat, and rains caused houses to collapse in eastern Punjab province, said Afan Kathia, a spokesman for the Provincial Disaster Management Authority. He said more rains were expected this week. Rains, which also lashed the capital Islamabad, killed 7 people in southwestern Balochistan province over the weekend, and 8 others died in northwestern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province bordering Afghanistan. Authorities in Balochistan declared a state of emergency. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said in a televised remark that he had ordered authorities to provide relief aid in regions hit by rains. Pakistan's water reservoirs would improve because of the rains, he said, while expressing concern over the deaths and damage. Heavy flooding from seasonal rains in Afghanistan has killed 3 people and injured 27 others in the past 3 days, according to Abdullah Janan Saik, the Taliban spokesman for the State Ministry for Natural Disaster Management. More than 600 houses were either damaged or destroyed, while around 200 livestock died. The flooding also damaged large areas of agricultural land and more than 35 kilometers of road, he said. He said authorities in Afghanistan had provided aid to nearly 23,000 families and that flash floods were reported in 20 out of the country's 34 provinces. Rafi Alam, a Pakistani environmental expert, said that such heavy April rainfall is unusual. 2 years ago, Pakistan witnessed a heat wave in March and April, and now we are witnessing rains, and it is all because of climate change, which had caused heavy flooding in 2022, he said. In 2022, downpours had swelled rivers and at one point inundated one-third of Pakistan, killing 1,739 people. The floods also caused $30 billion in damage. A search and rescue team found 18 people killed by landslides on Indonesia's Sulawesi Island and are still looking for 2 missing officials, said Monday. Rescuers found about 14 bodies in Makele village on Sunday afternoon and 4 in South Makele in Masianos Bakebel, the chief of Makassar Search and Rescue. We are still looking for 2 more victims, but fog and drizzle made the search difficult. The officers in the field were overwhelmed, Suleiman Malaya, chief of the Tanah Toraja District Disaster Management Agency, said on Monday. Loosened by torrential rain, mud poured from surrounding hills onto 4 houses just before midnight Saturday in the Tanah Toraja district of South Sulawesi province, said local police chief Gunardi Mundu. He said a family gathering was being held in one of the houses when the landslide hit. Dozens of soldiers, police and volunteers joined the search in the remote hillside villages of Makale and South Makale, Mundu said. Rescuers early Sunday managed to pull out 2 injured people, including an 8-year-old girl, and rushed them to a nearby hospital. Downed communications lines, bad weather and unstable soil were hampering the rescue efforts, Mohari said. Tanah Toraja has many popular tourist attractions, including traditional houses and wooden statues of bodies buried in caves known as Tautau. Seasonal downpours cause frequent landslides and floods in Indonesia, a chain of 17,000 islands where millions of people live in mountainous areas or fertile floodplains. More civilians died across Ukraine on Sunday as analysts warned that delays in U.S. military assistance would see Kyiv's struggle to fight off Russian offensives. One man was Sunday killed after a Russian drone hit the truck he was driving in the Sumy region, the local prosecutor's office said. Elsewhere, a 67-year-old woman was killed after shelling hit an apartment block in the Donetsk region, said Governor Vadim Filashkin. Officials in the Kharkiv region said also Sunday that they had retrieved the bodies of a 61-year-old woman and a 68-year-old man killed by a Russian strike the previous day. 10 Russian Shahed-type drones were shot down over the Kharkiv region overnight, the Ukrainian Air Force said Sunday. Meanwhile, shelling the Russian-occupied Kherson region killed 2 civilians Sunday, said Moscow-installed leader Vladimir Saudo. Ukrainian drones were also reported in Russia's Krasnodar and Belgorod regions and over the Black Sea, the Russian Defense Ministry said. The news came as the Institute for the Study of War, a Washington-based think tank, warned that delays in Western military assistance would increasingly hamper Ukraine's ability to push back Russian advances. With the war in Ukraine entering its 3rd year and a vital U.S. aid package for Kyiv struck in Congress, Russia has used its edge in firepower and personnel to step up attacks across eastern Ukraine. It has increasingly used satellite-guided gliding bombs dropped from planes from a safe distance to pummel Ukrainian forces beset by a shortage of troops and ammunition. In its report, the ISW said that Russian forces were prioritizing grinding tactical gains with operational level efforts focusing on the cities of Liman, Chasiv Yar and Pokrovsk. The Russian military command likely assesses that Ukrainian forces will be unable to defend against current and future Russian offensives operation due to delays in or the permanent end of the U.S. military assistance, the think tank said. The trial of a former Syrian army general over his alleged role in war crimes committed in 2012 in his home country started at a Stockholm report Monday, first according to a human rights organization. Syria has been ravaged by civil war for over 13 years. Brigadier General Mohammed Hammer, who is currently residing in Sweden, is charged with aiding and abetting crimes violating international law, described by the prosecution as a serious crime when he was charged in February. Correspondent got a hold of Hammer's accusation sheet, in which the prosecutor claims the 65-year-old, who was a brigadier general in the Syrian army between January 2012 and July 2012, has participated in the warfare that systematically included attacks carried out in violation of the principle of distinction, caution, and proportionality, adding that the attacks were indiscriminate. The prosecutor also said Hammer worked in the Syrian Army's 11th Division and he was vital in making strategic decisions and implementing military operations. This trial is important because it is the first time that anyone from the Syrian government or the Syrian army is actually put on trial for the attacks that took place, said Ida Samani of the Stockholm-based Civil Rights Defenders, a politically and religiously independent human rights organization. The former general risks up to 18 years in jail and even life imprisonment, Samani said. A life sentence in Sweden is generally between 20 to 25 years in prison. 8 plaintiffs filed the case against Hammer, including a man whose brother was killed in the attacks on the Syrian city of Homs, as well as a British photographer and a French journalist who were both injured in the attack on the city's media center, the Swedish news agency said. Little is known about Hammer. He defected from the Syrian army in July 2012 and joined those fighting to remove President Bashar Assad from power. Syrian opposition activists say he was involved in the fighting in the once rebel-held neighborhood of Baba Amr in Homs city, Syria's third largest. Pope Francis on Saturday sided with a group of Peruvian villagers who have complained that companies linked to a powerful South American church group have tried to evict them from their land using lawsuits and obscure land tilting schemes. In a video recorded at his residence in the Vatican, the Pope sent a message of support to members of the San Juan Bautista de Catacal's farmers community in northern Peru, who have been fending off lawsuits from companies associated with the Sodalitium Christiani Vitae since 2014. I know what happened to you, the Pope said in Spanish. Defend your land and don't let them steal it. The Sodalitium is a lay group that runs schools and spiritual retirement centers in several South American countries, but is also involved in real estate, agriculture, and construction companies. The conservative group was founded in Peru in 1971 and gained thousands of members in South America, where it also ran homes housing consecrated members, but the Sodalitium has come under increased scrutiny in recent years after its founder and some of its main leaders were accused of committing sexual abuses against children. Peruvian prosecutors have also launched investigations into the Sodalitium's finances and have accused the group of hiding money in offshore bank accounts. Last July, the Vatican sent a high-level commission to Peru to investigate the Sodalitium's action and determine whether the group should be dissolved. The commission was led by one of the Vatican's top prosecutors for sexual abuse cases, and members spoke with journalists, Sodalitium leaders, and survivors of abuse. During the visit, the Vatican's investigators also met with members of the Catacois farmers community. The villagers accused the Sodalitium of trying to take over 1,900 hectares of land farmed by the community for centuries through forged documents that claim the land has been purchased by a group of local companies. More than 250 survivors of the bombing that killed 22 people at a 2017 Ariana Grande concert in Manchester, England, are taking legal action against Britain's domestic intelligence agency, lawyers said. Lawyers from 3 law firms said Sunday they have submitted a group claim on behalf of more than 250 clients to the UK's Investigatory Powers Tribunal. They said they could not provide further details because it was an ongoing legal matter. Suicide bomber Salman Abedi set up a knapsack bomb in Manchester Arena at the end of Grande's concert on May 22, 2017, as thousands of young fans were leaving. More than 100 people were injured, many of them children and teenagers. Abedi died in the explosion. An official inquiry reported last year that Britain's domestic intelligence agency, MI5, didn't act swiftly enough on key information and missed a significant opportunity to prevent the bombing, the deadliest extremist attack in the UK in recent years. Abedi had been a subject of interest to MI5 officials in 2014, but his case was closed shortly after because he was deemed to be low risk. The report also found that one MI5 officer admitted they considered intelligence about Abedi to be a possible national security concern, but didn't discuss it with colleagues quickly enough. Ken McCallum, the head of MI5, said in a rare televised statement that he was profoundly sorry his agency was unable to prevent the attack. You are watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We return after this break.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on-the-spot news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today. Only on ATN.
People into the country illegally. That is amazing. Honorable
So no agreement with the EU, but
Welcome back. This is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. Now the rest of our stories. A police officer and a sheriff's deputy in upstate New York were shot and killed Sunday night in an exchange of gunfire with a suspect who also was killed, police said. The shooting took place shortly after 8 p.m. in Liverpool, about 6 miles north of Syracuse. The Syracuse Police Department and Onondaga County Sheriff's Office were tracking a vehicle that eluded police earlier. Syracuse Chief Joseph Cecile said during a press conference, 2 Syracuse police officers unsuccessfully attempted to stop a suspicious vehicle, but got the license plate and tracked it to an address on Darien Drive in Liverpool. They requested assistance from the sheriff's office after learning the suspect might be armed, Cecile said. The officers found the vehicle at the home and saw what appeared to be guns inside the auto. They then heard what sounded like someone manipulating a firearm in the residence, Cecile said. At least one suspect exchanged gunfire with the officers. The Syracuse officer, sheriff's deputy, suspect was shot and transported to Upstate Hospital in Syracuse. All 3 were pronounced dead at the hospital, Cecile said. We lost 2 heroes tonight, Cecile said. Onondaga County Sheriff Toby Shelley and police plan to search the house as part of the ongoing investigation. This is a dark day for Syracuse. Syracuse Mayor Ben Walsh said, "This is our worst nightmare come true." Colorado Democrat-controlled House on Sunday will ban the sale and transfer of semi-automatic firearms, a major step for the legislation after roughly the same bill was swiftly killed by Democrats last year. The bill, which passed on a 35-27 vote, is now on its way to the Democratic-led state Senate. If it passes there, it could bring Colorado in line with 10 other states, including California, New York, and Illinois, that have prohibitions on semi-automatic guns. But even in a state plagued by some of the nation's worst mass shootings, such legislation faces headwinds. Colorado's political history is purple, shifting blue. Only recently, the bill's chances of success in the state Senate are lower than they were in the House, where Democrats have a 46-19 majority and a bigger far-left flank. Governor Jared Polis, a Democrat, indicated his wariness over such a ban. Last year, a similar bill died in a committee, with some Democratic lawmakers citing concerns over the sweep of a ban and promises they made to the constituent to avoid government overreach affecting most gun owners' rights. Democrats last year passed and police signed into law 4 less expensive gun control bills. Those included raising the age for buying any gun from 18 to 21, establishing a 3-day waiting period between the purchase and receipt of a gun, strengthening the state's red flag law, and rolling back some legal protections for the firearm industries, exposing it to lawsuits from the victims of gun violence. Those laws were signed months after 5 people were killed at an LGBTQ+ nightclub in Colorado Springs last year. Soon the state will mark the 25th anniversary of the 1999 Columbine High School shooting that killed 13 people. Other mass shootings in Colorado include 12 people killed in 2012 at an Aurora movie theater and 10 people killed in 2021 at a Budo supermarket. This is where the modern era shooting began with Columbine. Democratic Rep. Javier Mabray said in urging fellow lawmakers to join other states that ban semi-automatic weapons, Republicans decry the legislation as an onerous encroachment on the U.S. Constitution's Second Amendment. They argue that mental illness and people who do not value life, not guns, are the issues that should be addressed. People with ill intent can use other weapons, such as knives, to harm others, they argued. Democrats responded that semi-automatic weapons can cause much more damage in a short period of time. In Aurora, when the shooter walked in that theater and opened fire, Mabry said, and in less than 90 seconds shot up a room full of people. That cannot be done with a knife. That can be done with a knife. Tech executive Elon Musk and Argentine President Javier Milei finally sealed their budding bromance Friday at a Tesla electric car factory in Texas. Their first meeting after months of mutual admiration on social media, it was a match made in free market haven. In social media posts that through their right-wing, the pair played up their real-life friendship to an exciting and inspiring future. Musk wrote on X, or Twitter, as it was known before. He brought it in 2022, along with a photo of him and Malay both grinning widely and giving the camera 2 thumbs up, the libertarian president's trademark gesture. "Long live freedom, damn it," Malay wrote on his own X post, which included a selfie of the pair with the president sporting his signature leather bomber and Musk in his Air Force Academy Navy sports jacket. The meeting was closed to the press, and a statement from Malay's office produced little news, saying the free market enthusiast discussed issues ranging from the expected how to promote entrepreneurship by slashing red tape to the existential danger posed by declining birth rates. Malay's office said that the president offered to help Musk in the clash between social media company X and the Brazilian authorities, which have accused Musk of obstruction for defying a judge's order to block some accounts. The two also agreed to host a big event soon in Argentina to promote the idea, the Argentine presidency said, but provided no further details. Smiley photo op and video of Malay's joyride in a futuristic Cybertruck pickup. Much was at stake for Argentina. Support from the U.S., particularly at the International Monetary Fund, to which Argentina owes over $42 billion, is critical to boosting investor confidence in the South American country as Malay seeks to overhaul a broken economy with market-oriented policies. With the revival of socialist governments across Latin America, from Chile to Brazil, experts say Argentina is now poised to emerge as a key strategic partner for Washington. There is a chance that Argentina can fill this vacuum and eventually be a strategic partner for the U.S., said Sergio Bernstein, who runs a political consultancy in Buenos Aires. Musk can serve to speed this process of Argentina becoming part of the U.S. new network of friends. Last month, Musk's company delivered Starlink satellite internet service to Argentina, a move cheered by farmers to keep up with high-tech agriculture in remote parts of the country. Gerardo Worthing, Argentina's ambassador to the U.S., attended Friday's meeting and told La Nación newspaper that Malay and Musk discussed Argentina's vast reserves of strategic minerals, including lithium, an indispensable ingredient in batteries for electric cars. As more than 100 men carrying an elaborate float of Jesus halted before him, Cardinal Alvaro Ramazzini lost no time in calling for social justice, the hallmark of the Catholic bishop's decades-long frontline ministry. That this procession may revive in the heart the willingness to discover Jesus present in the person who suffers, Ramazzini said in an impromptu speech, pointing to the dozens of elderly and disabled lining a street in Guatemala City's oldest neighbors. "If we don't have that ability, don't tell me you are Christian. I won't believe that." Elevated by Pope Francis to the top hierarchy of the Catholic Church, Ramazzini has continued his unflinching focus on the poor, the indigenous and the migrant that has garnered him great affection from the marginalized and many threats of violence, including rumors of an arrest warrant, as his native Guatemala struggles through political turmoil and remains a hotspot of migration to the United States. At the procession during the Easter season, he didn't mince words for Guatemala's government. He denounced the lack of Social Security provisions for the elderly that left many feeling like indigent beggars, before placing on the float a plaque honoring the elder care volunteers, at whose invitation he had from Texas. Many of the elderly volunteers had taken in their wheelchairs and walkers to the processional route could hardly believe their eyes when they saw the 76-year-old Cardinal Santa down the street to mingle with them, said group organizer Teresita Samayoa Batista. "This is to evangelize with actions," she said. "To me, he was the voice of a people who can't speak and are suffering, just like Jesus would do. This is what you call commitment to a people, no matter if they're religious or not." A transitional council tasked with choosing Haiti's next prime minister and cabinet was established Friday in a move supporters hope will help quell turmoil in the troubled Caribbean country where most of the capital remains under the grip of criminal gangs. The formation of the council, announced in a decree published Friday in a Haitian government gazette, was expected to soon trigger the resignation of Prime Minister Ariel Henry, but a new provision said he would step down when a new premier is chosen. Henry did not immediately comment. Those awarded a seat in the council are Petite de Saline, a party led by former senator and presidential candidate Jean-Charles Moisy, EDE Red, a party led by former Prime Minister Claude Joseph, the Montana Accord, a group of civil society leaders, political parties and others, Fanmi Levalas, the party of former President Jean Bertrand Aristide, the January 30th Collective, which represents parties including that of former President Michael Martelly, and the private sector. The two non-voting seats are represented by someone from Haiti's civil society and its religious sector. The establishment of the politically inclusive council signals the possibility of a new beginning for Haiti. A Caribbean trade bloc known as CARICOM, who helped form the council, said in a statement. It said that the council will take the troubled country through elections to the restoration of the lapsed state institutions and constitutional government. It is also clear that one of the first priorities of the newly installed presidential council will be to urgently address the security situation so that Haitians can go about their daily lives in a normal manner, safely access food, water and medical services, children can return to school, women can move around without fear of horrific abuses, and also that businesses can reopen, CARICOM said. Australian police are examining why a lone assailant who stabbed 6 people to death in a busy Sydney shopping mall and injured more than a dozen others targeted women while avoiding men, a police commissioner said on Monday. The killer's father blamed his son's frustration at not having a girlfriend. Police shot and killed the homeless assailant, Joel Cauchi, during his knife attack in the Westfield Bondi Junction Mall on Saturday near world-famous Bondi Beach. Police have ruled out terrorism and said the 40-year-old had a history of mental illness. New South Wales State Police Commissioner Karen Webb said detectives would question Cauchi's family in a bid to determine his motives. CCTV footage from the mall showed Cauchi targeted women with a 30-centimeter knife. The videos speak for themselves, don't they? And that is certainly a line of inquiry for us, Webb said. It is obvious to me, it is obvious to detectives that seems to be an area of interest, that the offender had focused on women and avoided the men, Webb added. The attacker's father, Andrew Cauchi, said he knew why his son, who suffered from schizophrenia, had targeted women, because he wanted a girlfriend and he's got no social skills, and he was frustrated out of his brain. The visibly distraught 76-year-old told reporters outside his hometown in Toowoomba in Queensland State, an 870-kilometer drive across the New South Wales border from Sydney. He is my son and I'm loving a monster. To you, he's a monster. To me, he was a very sick boy. Believe me, he was a very sick boy, the father added. The only male killed was Faraz Tahir, a Pakistani refugee who worked at the mall as a security guard. Tahir had not been armed. Webb said most of the 12 victims who survived fair wounds were also women. The evidence will be provided to a coroner to report on the circumstances of the deaths. Webb expected the coroner would also address the question of whether security guards at the mall, which is one of Australia's largest, should be armed. The families of 2 victims based overseas had been advised of their deaths, police said. Those victims are Tahir, 30, from Pakistan, and Yizhuan Cheng, 27, from China. Also killed were Jade Young, 47, Don Singleton, 25, Pikria Darchia, 55, and Ashley Good, 38. 8 victims who survived their injuries remained in hospitals on Monday, including Good's 9-month-old daughter. The baby's condition improved overnight Sunday from critical to serious, health authorities said. The conditions of the other 7 ranged from critical to stable. And that's the international news for today. Before we go, another look at the major stories. From Niger, Russian military trainers arrive this week. Israel-Hamas war, U.S. highlights role to prevent wider regional escalation. Singapore, Prime Minister Lee to step down after 2 decades. United Kingdom, survivors of 2017 bombings sue intelligence agency. United States, Colorado passes bill to ban semi-automatic firearms. Australia, police investigates lone assailant who killed 6 people. I am Valentina Lawrence. Thank you for watching. You can follow us on all our social media platforms on X, Atlantic TV Net, Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network, Instagram, Atlantic TV Network. Or you can watch us live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv. Do remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Do have a lovely afternoon. Thank you.